It's time for some straight talk. The big wireless companies charge a boatload for their superior network coverage. But guess what? Straight Talk uses the same cell towers but charges a lot less. Who knew? Well, now you do. And I do. So let's do something. It's time to switch to Straight Talk. Unlimited plans start as low as $35 a month on America's largest, most dependable networks. Straight Talk Wireless. Only at Walmart.
Savings may vary. A month equals 30 days. Please refer always to the latest terms and conditions of service at straighttalk.com.
What a crazy morning we got working here in every conceivable way. We're back. We're better than ever. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. We've enjoyed some delicious barbecue this morning.
Oh, smells good. Goodness.
Courtesy of my trainer and good friend Alex Shafiro, who just tweeted at me or texted me.
He can train me anytime, by the way.
he texted me, you're the man. I cannot believe you actually used your hands. That's how I know I've made it. Now, I have washed up pretty significantly since then.
You should afterwards, but during the eating process, and Jack, you from Texas.
Mandatory to use your hands.
Hey, thank you. Come on.
We have not fully and appropriately introduced our new guest, as we're thrilled to be talking with Steven Jackson, who's in our studio, does a terrific job analyzing the NBA all over ESPN, and this is our first time getting a chance to meet in person, so it's a delight to have you here.
Glad to be here. It's my second time here. You weren't here the first time, but I'm glad to be back.
Well, then this is going to be so much more enjoyable for you. And one of the many things that I can offer you some food if you would like.
Man, that barbecue smells real good. I got a lot of work to do, so I want to get it on my suit because I don't know how to be clean.
All right, we got a million different things that we're doing here, and obviously the NBA season kicks off tonight. We got not the World Series yet, but the League Championship Series rolling and all of the football and everything else. So let's jump headlong into this NBA situation, and let's start with the biggest picture. I was looking over some of the early notes this morning. Las Vegas says that Golden State is the most prohibitive favorite they've ever had in the preseason for any team in any sport. Mm-hmm. In your mind, barring a significant injury, and that's always the outlier in any sport, do you see any way anybody beats them this year?
Oh, the world ended. That's the only way they're gonna win it.
Maybe it's flat.
Exactly. That's the only way. I don't see nothing changing if those guys can stay healthy. You know, the points they scored in preseason, the numbers they put up in preseason shows that they're ready to pick up where they left off last year. So it's the sky's the limit for these teams. The only people that can beat them is them.
Now, for purpose of this conversation, let's set them aside. Mm-hmm. Let's look at the other teams, both in the East and West. Who do you like in either conference aside from Golden State?
Well, I love OKC. You know, I think if OKC can go out there and not worry about offense and just try to be a top 10 defensive team with the guys they have, they can learn how to score. I think they can play with anybody. And the same thing with Cleveland. I think Cleveland is better than last year. I think they have more professionals, more guys that don't mind being a star in their role, and got guys that can get the job done and better players around LeBron. I think if they can also become a great defensive team, they can be just as good as Golden State.
I have to stop you there. When you say Cleveland has more guys who are professionals, the obvious change they made was Kyrie Irving departing. So is that who you're referring to? Or are you taking that's going to be interpreted as a shot at Kyrie Irving? Did you mean it that way?
Not at all. Kyrie's my guy. Everybody knows I'm a big fan of Kyrie. I'm saying that to say that they have more guys on the team that can contribute. You know, they have a lot of guys last year that were on the team that were veterans, but they really can contribute. Kyle Korver's a great shooter, but it's a different shot in the fourth quarter with 30 seconds left. Mm-hmm. They have more guys that can make that shot. I have more confidence in Jeff Green. I have more confidence in Crowder. You know, I have more confidence in those guys. And I just think they have a better all-around team.
Dwayne Wade.
No shot at Kyrie. That's my guy.
Wade, Rose, et cetera. Obviously, all these guys. So how about Kyrie? So he goes back to Cleveland tonight. Mm-hmm. He'll hear it from the fans. That's obviously expected.
That's what you want, though.
I mean, I think that's fine, right? I don't. Well, you tell me, because you're closer to the situation than I am. I feel like the LeBron return to Cleveland was almost an event unto itself. That was so singular because of his particular connection to that community and the really weird circumstances under which he left, meaning the actual departure with the television special and everything else. All the others have seemed like just sort of normal stuff. Do the players mind that? Like, I got a sense KD did mind it last year. You heard it from him. You heard it from his mom. You saw him put the cupcake line on the sneakers and everything else. I felt that did bother him a little bit. Do you think, for the most part, it bothers players?
Sometimes. I mean, a lot of guys, you know, they invest a lot in those cities. You know, we talking about big players. We ain't talking about guys that sit at the end of the bench. You know, we talking about players that these cities promote. So they have some love and some connections to these cities. So some things will bother them because they feel like they gave their all to the city. But with Kyrie, I'm not worried because I feel like the only thing that's changing with him, he's so young and so talented. The only thing that's changing with him is the jersey. He's going to go out there and play well. He don't have LeBron on his side, so it's going to be different for him, but he's still going to be a dominant player.
So what is he? I'm sorry, Booger, but what exactly is Kyrie Irving if you take all of the and I don't want to call LeBron James a detriment or an impediment to his greatness, because LeBron is not only a great an all-time great player, but he's so unselfish. But Kyrie obviously wants that ball in his hands all the time and everything else. What do you think is the ceiling for him? What can he be now?
The sky's the limit. I think if you can average 30 points with a guy like LeBron, imagine how dangerous you can be by yourself. With other guys. Now, you're the guy and other guys you're feeding off you make other guys better. I'm excited to see it. Like I said, I'm a Kyrie fan, and it takes a lot for you to leave a guy like LeBron James and go on your own and want to stand on your own, and I commend him for it.
I'm interested that you put Cleveland kind of on the pedestal in the East. When you look at Kyrie going to Boston, they only have 4 players that were on the team from last year, and a lot of people thinking they're the biggest challenger to the Cavaliers. How do you see the chemistry, and do you like Jason Tatum, the rookie that they have in Boston?
I love him. When a guy like Paul Pierce speak high of him, got a chance to see him play, you got to respect that. And I like the coach. I like everything that they have around Kyrie. They brought in the All-Star from Utah.
Gordon Hayward,
of course, but I want to see what Horford does. I think he's gonna be big for them. Rozier's coming off the bench. I think he's just like what's the guy that let go to Detroit? Bradley,
yeah.
He's just like Bradley. Rozier, he's just like Bradley, so he can fill in. It's just what the role players do. I think Kyrie and Gordon Hayward are going to do their job. I think Tatum's going to come off the bench and do a great job as well.
Going out west, looking at Houston. James Harden is used to having the ball, and one of the reasons why he was up for the MVP is because he had the ball so much. Now you bring in Chris Paul, who's a point guard by nature. He needs the ball to run the offense. How do you see that dynamic working?
I think we've seen a little bit in preseason. I think Chris Paul, for the most part, is just focused on making plays. We know he can score when he needs to, but I think James this year, he's not going to average close to a triple-double this year. He's not going to average 10 assists this year. It's all about him scoring and making plays, and I think Chris Paul's going to get more assists, but I think James is still going to be dominant all across the board.
That's a complicated one to me. If you look at those two guys, now history is filled with guys who have been willing to sublimate their games in the interest of being better playing with someone. The most famous original example that everyone points to is Walt Frazier and Earl Monroe, and they were rivals, and Monroe played with the ball, and then he came and they figured out a way to make it work, and now we're seeing it seems like pretty much every year as these super teams come together and guys figure out their roles. But Harden has made himself into what he is now by having the ball in his hands all the time. So how do you see that distribution working? Because Paul's a guy who has to play with the ball in his hands, and Harden's a guy who it feels like almost has to play with the ball in his hands. So who has the ball?
Well, I think it works good. I think it would have been a travesty if Carmelo would have went there. But see, now you have Chris Paul and James. There's nobody else on that team.
Yeah.
There's nobody else to make plays. So I think with just two guys being that ball dominant, I think it can work because everybody else wants to catch and shoot or catch a lob and lay up. Nobody else wants to handle the ball that much. So I think it'll work.
So who's a better team right now, in your mind, Oklahoma City or Houston?
I'm going to OKC. When you got Paul George, Russ, and Carmelo on the same team with one of the best big men that doesn't get enough credit in Steve Adams, I love it. I love OKC.
And so if you're going to say that, then you must be insinuating that Carmelo is going to be okay being the third best player. Not the third best scoring option, but the third best player on the team.
Well, I think when he got ready to sign that contract, got ready to take that trade to OKC, I think he knew that. I mean, in his mind, as smart as he is and as high as his basketball IQ is, he knows at this point in his career he's not better than Paul George or Russell Westbrook.
Right.
So I got to go there, score my points, get the ball, play, be the four, and just be a star in my role. And if he wants to win, that's the way he has to approach it.
That he feels to me like a guy. Now, again, Carmelo has been what he has been. He's walking into the Hall of Fame the second he becomes eligible. 100% deserves it. But he is a guy who the one thing left he can do is the one thing he seems to like doing the most. Like, I'm going to make a ridiculous comparison here because he's a greater player historically than this. But if he could be Vinnie Johnson, he could be the microwave. He could just be the guy who say, all right, right now, just give him the ball. We need a stretch of 4 minutes here where he'll just carry our offense all by himself. And I still think that maybe with the exception of Kevin Durant, I'm not sure there's another player in the league who'll do that better than Carmelo can do it.
And you're right. He's one of those guys that can definitely do that. But that's why I have them high this season, because in the playoffs, the game slows all the way down.
Right.
They have three guys that they can put on that block, post up, or get a bucket and just ISO. I love that. That's why I want them to just focus on defense, because scoring points is not going to be a problem for them.
Steven Jackson is here in studio with the Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts, which means the team that we left out in the conversation is San Antonio. And Greg Popovich, for those of you who haven't seen it, is extraordinarily outspoken in a variety of different things. They're making a lot more news off the court than they're making on the court right now. But they bring back a guy who, in my opinion, is the second best player in the sport, and Kawhi Leonard. And I don't know what would have happened last year in the playoffs if he didn't get hurt. They would have won Game 1. Maybe they wouldn't have won any more games in that series. We'll never know.
Right.
But what of them? It feels like all the off-season attention, it went to Houston with getting Paul, and it went to OKC with all the guys they brought in, and San Antonio sort of forgotten. What are they now?
This is every year. This is what they want. They want to fly under the radar. They don't want to be in the media. They don't want to be talked about. This is what Pop does. He gets his players together. He finds a diamond in the rough. He brings in Rudy Gay, rests Kawhi, make sure he's ready to go. You know, I got Pop for Coach of the Year again this year because I feel like when nobody's talking about him, that's when he's at his best. He's getting his soldiers ready to go to war, and they're gonna be ready.
What do you make of the LaMarcus Aldridge extension? Because he got a lot of flack over the last couple of years, not being the dominant guy that people thought he was going to be when he got to San Antonio, perennial 20-10 guy. Now you get the extension. I believe it was 74 over 3 or something like that. What do you make of LaMarcus Aldridge at this point in his career?
Well, you know, I'm glad they locked him in. I think it's good for him because they need him. You know, Tim Duncan speaks highly of him. Tim Duncan loves him, and I respect the world out of Tim Duncan. But I want him to care more. I want him to they pay you all this money, learn how to go left. Like, you know, like you're too good and they're paying you too much money for you to be in the NBA to not go left. You know, this has been the knock on him his whole career. Everybody knows his moves. He's not adding anything to his game. And I think at this point, add something to your game, get better. I honestly don't think he cares enough. I love the fact that they gave him an extension. I love the fact that he's in San Antonio because I think if any coach can get the best out of him, it's Pop. But he has to show he's hungry. He has to work and add stuff to his game because I think his game hasn't gotten better since probably the last 3-4 years. It's been the same.
Mike and Mike, we're talking basketball with Steven Jackson in our studio. The NBA is back on ESPN Radio tonight. We have the Warriors taking on Chris Paul and the Rockets with our coverage starting 9:30 Eastern on most of these ESPN radio stations. So let me ask you about two teams. We're talking about the contenders now, and I think we've pretty much – is there anyone we've left out? Does Washington belong in that conversation?
I think so.
They belong in the discussion with the legitimate contenders in the East.
Yeah, for the performance they put up last year in the playoffs, they only gonna get better. I think John Wall with his contract and his confidence coming in, I think they're gonna be best. I think they're gonna compete for the East.
Does Toronto belong in that conversation?
I like DeMar DeRozan. I just don't like that team. I don't think so.
To me, it's a jump shooting team.
Yeah,
to me, it's hard to win. I know everybody's going to point to Golden State, but Golden State is a terrific defensive team. That's the reason they can get away with being a jump shooting team. I just think Toronto, they struggle when that shot is off. When Kyle Lowry and DeRozan shot off, they struggle to get buckets.
Yeah, and like Golden State now, you got possibly the best player in the world with if you talk about him and LeBron, KD. He's the second best defender on that team. That says a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's one thing to be a jump shooting team. It's another thing when it's Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson taking the jump shots. That makes them all of a sudden look a whole lot better. Okay, so those are the contenders. The two most compelling teams to me in the league, because I have no idea what to expect them to be, are Minnesota and Philadelphia. Let's start with the Timberwolves. With the acquisition of Butler from Chicago, another year for Karl Anthony Towns. They give the money to Wiggins, and on they go. What are they? What are the Timberwolves this year?
Well, I'm excited to see. I mean, if you think about it, without Jimmy Butler, this is one of the teams that played Golden State the toughest the last 2 years without Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, but they won they won like 30 games last year.
Right. But I'm just rating their performance off against the championship team.
Right.
And adding Jimmy Butler now, I think Tibbs and Jimmy, I think they know how to get to these young kids. You know, the passion Jimmy plays with, I think he has some of me in him. Jimmy plays so hard and fierce on the court. I think if he can get Wiggins to play like that, Towns already has a little edge. You know, he's fine. But if they can get Wiggins to play with more passion, the same thing that LaMarcus Aldridge needs, more fire, you know, put some gunpowder in his food or something. These guys, they need that. If they can get that out of Wiggins, I think this team can make some damage in the West.
What does that mean? What is
make the playoffs? Make the playoffs. I don't think top 3, top 4 team, but definitely 5, 6 seed.
All right, and then how about the Sixers with the huge money they give to Embiid, who, for my money, if you could promise me he was going to stay healthy, and that's the biggest if maybe in the entire sport right now, I'd tell you I might take him over any of the other big guys, you know, the young big guys in the league right now. But he's played 31 games in 3 years. If he stays healthy, what are the Sixers this year?
They're great. I mean, if they can get him healthy and get Simmons healthy, you know, Simmons is like a left-hand LeBron out there right now in preseason. I love what they're doing there, you know, and I just trust anything the Colangelos are doing. You know, they've been in this sport so long. They know what they know what to do. They have a great coach, and Brett Brown has been in the San Antonio system. So it works. I think if they can get these young guys healthy, they'll be all right.
And more importantly, for the people on the West Coast, Lonzo Ball, what do we expect from him, both on and off the court with Dad LeVar?
Well, for the most part, the only thing I like about the whole situation, and I really don't have too much to say, is I love the kid's basketball IQ. You know, every father should support their kid. You know, every father should want the best for their kid, but it's a way to do it. And you can't tell a father how to do it, you know, at the end of the day. But I love the kid's basketball IQ, and I want to see him do good.
Mike and Mike, Steven Jackson's in our studio here. We're presented by Progressive Insurance, guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. All right, here's a fun one for both of you guys.
Yes.
I'm letting you start a team right now, and I'm giving the option. You can either start it with Karl Anthony Towns, the Greek Freak, Anthony Davis, Joel Embiid, or Kristaps Porzingis. Which guy are you taking?
Oh, that's easy for me.
Easy?
Yeah, it's easy.
You're going to take. I know who you're going to take.
You give me them names again?
All right, so it's basically all these guys who are 7 feet tall and do ridiculous things. So it's Karl Anthony Towns, it's the Greek Freak, it's Anthony Davis, it's Joel Embiid, and it's Porzingis.
I'm going AD.
See, I'm going to Greek Freak because
I knew you were going to take the Greek Freak. Booger loves the Greek Freak.
Well, because,
as he should. He should.
Right, and if you look at AD, they're saying the same things about the Greek Freak they said about AD, but we said it about AD, I feel like, for the last couple years. Like, when has he been able to, you know what, give me 2 other guys around AD and he'll take you to a championship. I think the Greek Freak, we're saying that about him. He's young, he's coming, he's going to be there. I think he needs to take another step, but I feel more confident at this point in the Greek Freak, where he is, his versatility, than I do in AD.
Yeah, with the Greek Freak, I expect more of a KD type player, be able to shoot. He definitely have to get his jump shot better. But I think he's one of those guys that can be able to do it all. I look at AD as the next Tim Duncan. You know, can shoot it off the glass, can do a little bit of everything. He's just way more athletic. You know, but both of these guys, you know, you can't lose either way. What
are they going to be now? I mean, if the New Orleans with the experiment they have there.
I'm so glad you asked me that.
Go ahead.
The reason, well, you know, they need a small forward. And what better small forward than a guy who's led the big 3 in scoring than Steven Jackson? You know, that's definitely what they need.
I like it, Jack.
You know what I mean? But they had Andy Rondo. Hopefully he can get back healthy. I think that was a big piece for them because I think with Boogie and 80, they respect him, and he's a guy that can make plays and make these guys better. Drew Holiday at the 2, I love that. I love that move. I think they have a big missing spot at the small forward. They need a small forward that can shoot and that can defend. I don't think they have that, but what they building there, if they can get Rondo healthy, they're building something nice.
Now, Jack, here's my question: are you still willing to defend?
That's what I still can do.
Okay.
You know, I can't really do too much of off pick and roll and stuff like that, but defending and spotting up shooting, I think I can still hold that down.
Okay, I like it.
People like me, geeks like me, were very upset last year about all the resting, and I don't know.
Me too. I'm a geek too. I hate it.
I hated it. We had Adam Silver on yesterday talking about it. He's talking about it, the changes they've made to the scheduling, no 4 games in 5 nights, a lot fewer back-to-backs and all the rest of that. Do you think it will make an appreciable difference? Do you think we'll see less of it?
I think so. You know, I don't like it. You know, I was one of those guys. I never wanted to come out of the game. I wanted to play every night if we could. You know, I've always was at the top of the minutes, top of the league in minutes. So I didn't like it. I think they're getting paid more money. To my mind, it should be more games. The more money, the more games. So I don't agree with it, but you know, they definitely pacifying these guys right now.
And how about the tanking? That's the other thing that Adam talked about with us yesterday. It drives me crazy. I mean, watching these teams that are doing everything they can to try and lose. And this goes for all sports, by the way, and football does the same thing. I think that we need to sit back. We need to rethink the way we do this stuff because we're incentivizing losing. If you can't win a championship, the best thing you can be is the worst team in the sport. I'm from New York. I'm a Jet fan my whole life. Right. And like all the Jet fans I know are sort of torn between, isn't this fun that they're winning? And, oh, my God, they're screwing themselves because they really needed to be 0-16 this year and get a quarterback. You should never want to lose. And so they're trying to make steps in that direction. Do you think that the little changes they made to the draft will help? They don't take effect for another 2 years. Yeah. And could you think of anything else they could do? Because it drives me crazy.
No, I really can't think of anything. I'm with you on that, though. I don't respect tanking or losing. I mean, you're disrespecting the game, you're disrespecting your fans, and you're disrespecting those other guys that worked all summer that come here to win. So anybody who's at the top making those decisions or who's putting their hand on and saying we have to tank, those guys don't.
You know, guys, y'all said it about tanking, but we're seeing a real life case now of the Astros. If the Astros win the championship this year, that's the case of a team that just went to the bottom, came back up through the draft, and they could win a title. And depending on what the 76ers do, they did the same thing. Like the process is we're going to tank, we're going to get all these draft picks, we're going to be good. So if you're a fan out there, which would you rather have, a team that's kind of so-so or a team that stinks and you know in 4 to 5 years they're going to be really, really good?
No, you're making my point for me. The Cubs are a perfect example of that as well, winning the championship last year by being as bad as they could for as long as they could. It's the system. I don't blame the teams for doing it. That's what I mean. Change the system so you stop incentivizing losing.
Right.
If the best thing you can be is awful, if you're 100% right, if the fans are screaming, be awful, right? I mean, like it's so counterintuitive. The fans should be out there booing when you win.
Right.
But the reality is, you should be trying to win. They should be making their incentive to win every single game.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for the Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. Rocket Mortgage is simple, allowing you to fully understand all the details and be confident you're getting the right mortgage for you. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLS, consumeraccess.org number 3030.
Home isn't just a place, it's a feeling. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, ADT helps keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance, so you can feel at home, wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling. ADT. Home. Safe home.
We'll have Paul Finebaum in a second. Couple of things I want to get to first. Booger McFarland is here. Stephen A. Smith is listening to the conversation, and he just tweeted at us. I can't tell exactly how long ago he did, but he tweeted at us, completely disagree with Greeny and Booger about tanking. Oh, I can't wait to talk to you all about that. So I'm curious to hear which part, Twitter, as we've all learned, is a medium where nuance is complicated. I'm curious to hear which part of it he disagrees with, because I want to make my stance, just for the sake of this conversation, totally clear. I do not criticize any team for tanking, because it is what the system has set up. The system is set up for that to be rewarded. I'll use the word incentivized. The best thing you can be is Golden State. If you can't be Golden State, then the best thing you can be is the worst team in the league. Same thing in football. If you can't be the Patriots, and if you don't have Aaron Rodgers, the best thing you can be is 0-16. And get Sam Darnold or Josh Rosen or whichever guy you want. And that's bad.
Right.
It's bad. It's not right. So I don't know what the better idea is, but there should be a better way.
I've heard Stephen A. mention this before, if I'm not mistaken. He was talking about the fans, and when you're tanking, how that looks and how that feels for the fans to have to pay for those tickets and have to go and knowing that your team has no chance to win. So I understand what he means by that, but you ask any fan base what they would rather do. Would they rather go through a couple of seasons of misery to get to a chance to win a championship, or would you rather go through some mediocre seasons that are 500? And while we're at it on Stephen A., you know as well as I know, I disagree with him also, especially about this Aaron Rodgers hit. He thinks that it was a dirty play. So Stephen A., if you're out there listening, we'll disagree with each other this morning. So if you want to find me, you know where I'm at.
Well, why was the need for that? Now all of a sudden, I don't understand. The two of you guys are good friends, and now all of a sudden you're creating a.
I'm just joking with Stephen. More to kind of get you riled.
Well, that was menacing. I mean, I'm scared now. You've made me nervous, and I'm sitting here. My name isn't even Stephen A. Anyway, he's coming up, of course, on First Take live in a half hour. Also, very quickly, I have the TV rating for last night's baseball game, and it's great. The TV rating for the baseball game last night was up 21% from last season and up an almost ridiculous 95% from 2015. Last night's baseball game did a 4-1. Last year's similar game did a 3-4, and the year before that did a 2-1. So baseball's ratings, again, with these high-profile, big-market teams, are doing extremely well.
What does the one tonight that starts at 9 do, in your opinion?
It'll do very well.
Even starting at 9?
Yeah, it'll do well at 9. Look, they put these games on at that time of night because more people are watching. It's just not old farts like us and little kids.
Well, I'm younger than you, so don't put me in your category.
Yeah, I know that. You're not old, but you're a fart. And speaking of old farts, no, I shouldn't have done that. Paul Finebaum is ready to go. Didn't mean that. I did not mean that. It just happened to be sitting there in front of me. Mr. Finebaum from the Paul Finebaum Show joins us live here. I apologize in advance, Paul.
Well, first of all, I'm not the one who's eating barbecue ribs at 9 o'clock in the morning.
That's correct.
But I am concerned about Booger. You put a Louisiana kid around ribs and he starts wanting to fight everyone. Stay away from Stephen A., Booger, okay?
I'll try to, Paul. Stephen A. is disagreeing with me about a lot of things today.
But it's not Stephen A. It's the posse around him that I would be concerned about.
Okay.
All right. You never know. Anyway, let's get to business here. What do we got here? Here's news for both of you guys. Okay. You two SEC-centric fellows.
Okay.
Mr. Golick and I were going over some things yesterday, and we discovered that if you were to make a list of all the teams that control their own destiny to make it into this year's college football playoff, one of them is unquestionably the University of Notre Dame. Notre Dame, if they win out with the schedule they have, they are going to be one of those 4 teams playing on New Year's Day. Paul, agree or disagree?
I completely agree. They've done better than expected, but as you know, Greeny, the schedule is in front of them starting Saturday night.
Paul, when you look at this Saturday night, especially with Michigan and Penn State, what do you see in that game, and do you think this game is going to be another referendum on Jim Harbaugh, big game, can he get it done?
Well, I don't think he can get it done. And Booger, what has he done this year? Quite frankly, what has he really done since he arrived in Ann Arbor to convince you or me or anyone else that he's going to get it done in State College? I don't think he can. I don't think Penn State's is as elite as maybe the ranking indicates, but they are certainly better than Michigan, which just cannot generate any offense whatsoever, and looked downright pathetic the other day against Indiana, which is a middling Big Ten team. Why do you have to go into overtime to beat a team like Indiana? And when you do that, and when you lose to Michigan State, you are not elite, and you shouldn't even be in the same conversation with schools like Penn State and Alabama and Georgia and TCU.
Paul, I'm just wondering, right now it seems to me that the 2 teams that are playing the best football, if you throw out the rankings and throw out everything, the 2 best teams you see on tape right now are Georgia and Alabama.
Exactly.
Tell me how the relationship between Nick Saban and Kirby Smart plays a role for a lot of people that don't know how that is.
That is such an intriguing question, Booger. For context, Kirby Smart has spent most of his career under Nick Saban at LSU and at Alabama. He was his closest advisor. And you knew this was going to happen at some point, but not long after Kirby arrived in Athens, things started happening. Like Kirby decided that he didn't care what Nick Saban thought. He's going after the same players. They had some epic battles over a couple of kids. Then one player wanted a defensive safety wanted to transfer on a graduate transfer from Alabama to Georgia, Booger, and Saban tried to stop it. The SEC intervened and let him go, and that grew an even nastier debate or feud between the two. Nick Saban and Kirby Smart would both deny it, but I'm telling you, there is no love lost between those two. The people on the Alabama side feel like Kirby has gone in and taken the inner sanctum information, which is what do you expect him to do? It's the same players everyone is going after, but I am fascinated by that meeting just to listen to all the nice things they say about each other, but I don't think they care for one another any longer at all.
Mike and Paul, and so let's play this thing out. They're in the same conference, but they're not in the same division of the conference, so they don't play each other in the regular season. No. So there's a 2-part question. Do you expect them to meet unbeaten in the SEC championship game? And if they do, how would you handicap the chance that if that's a close game, both of them wind up making the Final Four?
Yeah, I mean, right now I do think that's going to happen. They both have to deal with Auburn, and I think that will be Georgia's toughest game, and I think it will be Alabama's toughest game because of Auburn's defense. It is very good. Right now, I checked in with Danny Sheridan the other day. He said if this game were held today, it's not going to be, but if it were, Alabama would be a 13-point favorite. I think it would be closer than that, and I think if that number is under a touchdown, I think they both have a very good chance of making, especially if Alabama wins and Georgia against the number 1 team in the country. But on that subject, I don't think anyone in the country can match up to Alabama right now. I think the debate about Clemson leading into last weekend in Syracuse was a specious conversation, and I've said so many times. Alabama is far and away the best team in the country. The only issue that they have is at quarterback, and whether Jalen Hurts can win a game with his arm. That has yet, he hasn't had to do that yet. He hasn't even come close, and that could be a challenge down the road. But even Georgia cannot match up to Alabama right now.
Paul Finebaum with us, brought to you by Goodyear. Tires as hardworking as college football's most blimp-worthy athletes. Goodyear, official sponsor of the college football playoff.
Paul, so with that being said about Alabama, and just to kind of piggyback off what you said, you're sold on the development of Jalen Hurts and the progress that he's made so far this season.
Look, I am, but we haven't seen him under the gun, and I think that's the X factor. And quite frankly, until late in the year, I don't think that's going to be an issue. 2-3 weeks from now, when LSU rolls in, I'm sure people who sit around in the morning wearing LSU sweatshirts are going to try to make a case, Greeny, that this is going to be a great game, but these two teams do not match up very well. And I think Alabama will ease into the final game of the season against Auburn, but I do think that will be an issue because of where it's being played and Kevin Steele's defense, as you well know, Booger.
Paul, with the Syracuse's upset of Clemson, Dino Babers is getting a lot of national love. We also know there's a situation in Knoxville that you and I both believe it's not if but when Butch Jones gets fired. Is there any thinking that maybe Dino Babers could be a prospective coach there in Knoxville?
Yeah, I mean, I think he will be on a lot of people's lists. As far as the folks in Knoxville, I mean, they are looking at a laundry list of candidates right now. And I think after Saturday, when Tennessee rolls into Tuscaloosa and loses by some historic proportion, that could be the end. It's hard to predict the end for Butch Jones because it's already over. But Babers, as you guys know yesterday, having spoken to him and so many others, he will get a big job. A lot of names are surfacing for this job. I've heard Dan Mullen's name mentioned. Booger, because we had this conversation, and you can ask him tomorrow. There's a segment of Tennessee fans who desperately want John Gruden. He was in town over the weekend before the Monday night game, and I think he flirted with that job a couple of years ago. His wife was a cheerleader there. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think you'll see a lot of interesting names for that job, and I think you'll see them very, very quickly.
I don't either think that John will take it. I agree with you. I saw some of that speculation over the course of last weekend, and just getting to know John a little bit. Look, I could be totally wrong. It's not like I've asked him this question, but I don't think he goes back as a college coach. I just don't see him putting up with all of the restrictions. This is a guy who wants to start coaching football at 3:17 in the morning. I don't see someone saying to him, "There's 20 hours a week you can do this, and that's it." I find that very difficult.
Can you imagine him sitting in living rooms having to eat deer chili, Booger, in the middle of nowhere?
No. Hey, man, you going to come play for me? You with me?
I could see him eating ribs with his hands. If I could do it, anybody could do it.
Yeah, but when you recruit, you have to eat like 4 meals a night because everyone wants to serve the head coach a dinner.
And only Nick Saban passes. That's one of my favorite
stories
of all time. All right, we got to run. Paul, we always appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.
Computer, execute 12.4p operation.
Optimizing algorithm. Running encryption packet alpha 99. Oh, I don't feel so good.
What is it, computer?
Is it hot in here? It feels hot in here. I feel a little clammy. I should lie down or something.
A computer with a virus? Surprising. What's not surprising? How much you could save by switching to Geico.
Those oysters Rockefeller were a mistake.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
Mike and Mike, if you missed anything fun today, and there's been a ton of it, including a really passionate Ryan Clark with us in hour number 3 and Steven Jackson here in hour number 4 and much more. A reminder, you can listen to all 4 hours of Mike and Mike On Demand in the ESPN app. You can also subscribe to the Best of Mike and Mike podcast, all available in the Listen tab of the ESPN app. I have the solution for the tanking problem, which will never happen, in a second. But let me just first tell you, as you know, we're giving away these bobbleheads as our way of saying thanks. And our wives took over these, and Chris has given away all of hers, and my wife Stacy is giving away the rest of hers today. So there is a Predict the Score contest based upon the Yankees and Cubs. My childhood team and her childhood team are both in action today. So she's doing Predict the Score contests. You can send them to her. She's at StacyGSG on Twitter, and she is going to do all the rest of her bobbleheads. I think she has 8 or 9 of them left. Yeah. So you have a chance, and you have your last chance. So go ahead and
just grab mine,
predict
by
the score.
Yeah,
but not everyone has the opportunity of being here.
I'm just letting you know I'm just going to grab one in a few minutes and take it with me.
So for all of you who are not A, here in our studio, and B, bigger than me, you have to enter this Predict the Score contest, and that's your way to win. So go ahead. It's on Twitter, at StacyGSG. Now, A lot of people are sending us in one word. Mm-hmm. It's a magic word in sports. It's a great word, actually. It's a word I'd never heard anywhere else, and I really like it. And it'll never happen here, but it should. And the word is relegation. That is what they do in European soccer. Mm-hmm. They take the worst. Is it just the single worst team, or is it the bottom 2 or 3? Bottom 2, thank you. And they take the worst teams in the league, and at the end of the season, they get relegated. They get sent down to a lower league, and the best teams in the lower league get elevated. And that is brilliant. And before you say, that's crazy, that could never happen here. Well, they're doing it there. Yeah. And those leagues, they make just as much money and are just as visible and just as significant and just as popular, if not more, in those countries than the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball is here. It just isn't the way we've ever done it, so we're never going to do it. But the reality is, it's a great idea, and you want to talk about incentivizing winning. It's all well and good to get the first pick in the draft. How'd you like to be playing in the G League next season, in arenas that hold 8,000 people and never be on television? I think it's a fabulous idea. Again, it'll never happen, but it's the best idea I've ever heard.
Well, it's one of the best ideas that you've ever come up with when I've been hosting with you.
Let me make it clear. I didn't come up with this. They've been doing it in British soccer for years.
But for you to insinuate that we could do this in basketball, I think is kind of brilliant.
We'll never do it, but it's a great idea.
I'm trying to give you credit here.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, you're right.
You're right. It'll never.
I don't take a compliment well.
Yeah, I know that. It'll never happen in basketball because of a number of things. How would this work out if the 76ers had gotten relegated the last couple of years? What would you do with their arena? Because they wouldn't want to play in their big arena.
Well, what do they do? What do they do in England?
I don't know.
They still play there. They still play. They're just playing in a lesser league.
Okay. Well, theoretically, it could work then.
But that wouldn't happen in the NBA because people wouldn't come. If they were playing all the other lesser teams, people wouldn't come. It's not going to work. They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it, but it would be a good idea if they
did. And I think there was another thought that came up one time on the show where you incentivize the team that finishes just outside the playoffs. In other words, if you're winning but you don't quite make the playoffs, that team gets the higher percentage of balls.
That's the Greeny plan, right. Which is my original plan was you cut the playoffs in half. There's too many teams that make it, which would make the regular season much more important. They'll never do that. And then you arrange the ping pong balls in the reverse order, right. Which is to say the team with the best record that missed the playoffs gets the most ping pong balls, and on and down it goes. And the response is always, well, what happens to the teams that are bad? How do they ever get better? And I'll say, figure out a way. Figure out a way. Try not stinking. Oh. We got to stop already with this incentivizing losing. It's terrible. You're going to games that teams are trying to lose. They're purposely trading. They're benching players that might make them win. They're trading away players that might, God forbid, make them win a game or two. That's not what this is supposed to be. And people are paying full ticket prices to go see this stuff. You should be able to make one demand, and that is that everyone is trying as hard as they can to win. And I get that the players are. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. The players are out there that are playing are trying to win. But the teams, the organizations, the franchises are not, and that's not right. Adam Silver referenced European soccer multiple times on our show yesterday. This is something they'll never do, but it would be a good idea. All right, today, in the meeting that begins in the next 10 minutes, mm-hmm. NFL players and the NFL front office are meeting in New York City, and I know that we are all hopeful that something really positive and constructive can come out of these meetings so that the ugliness and the anger that surrounds that sport right now can begin to dissipate, hopefully in a way that makes everyone feel good.
It depends on the tone of the meeting. If everyone comes in with the proper tone, wanting to get something done, then something will get done. If everyone comes in very emotional with an agenda, then nothing will get done. I just hope for our fans. I hope for the people who, like Colin Kaepernick, who had an initial thought in his heart, I hope we can get back to the initial point at some point instead of all the grandstanding that everybody's doing.
We'll find out. Obviously, we'll have coverage for you all day long. 2 great baseball games on the schedule today. We'll see you back and better than ever tomorrow. Thank you, Booger.
Anytime, buddy.
You're the best, my man. See you tomorrow. Mike and Mike.